Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it. I sat at the kitchen table, my fingers wrapped around a cold cup of coffee, untouched since morning. The clock on the wall ticked in steady defiance of my thoughts, dragging me through memories I wished I could forget. The rain drummed against the window, a rhythmic tapping that mirrored the hollow ache in my chest. Dolly's laughter had once filled this house. Now, silence settled in like dust in the corners, untouched and suffocating. My daughter, my beautiful, fragile little girl, was asleep upstairs, her breathing shallow, her small frame swallowed by blankets. The last chemo session had drained her strength, and for the past 2 nights she had barely eaten. I was running out of ways to pretend everything would be okay. Dolly's mom, my wife Angel, was tragically killed in a car accident 2 years ago. A sudden knock at the door jolted me, sending a cold shiver down my spine. I hesitated. No one visited this late. When I opened the door, Rachel stood there, an umbrella dripping rain onto the porch. Her lips curled in something resembling a smile, but her eyes, dark and calculating, held no warmth. "You're not answering your phone," she said, stepping inside uninvited, shaking the rain from her sleeves. "Mom and Dad have been trying to reach you all day." I sighed, closing the door. "I've been busy." Rachel's gaze flickered toward the staircase. "How's Dolly?" The way she said it, like she was forcing herself to remember my daughter existed, made my stomach tighten. "She's resting," I said stiffly. "What do you want?" Rachel exhaled dramatically and sank onto the couch. "It's about the house." Of course it was. It always was. "The house is mine, Rachel. Grandma left it to me," I said, already exhausted by the conversation I knew was coming. Rachel's jaw tightened. "I need it more than you do. I can barely keep up with rent. Meanwhile, you live here alone, clinging to a memory." A flash of anger burned through me. "I live here with my daughter, who, in case you forgot, is sick." Rachel waved a dismissive hand. "And what happens when?" She caught herself and changed course, but I already knew what she was going to say. "What happens when she's gone?" My pulse hammered against my ribs. "You think I don't know what you're doing?" I said, voice low. "You're waiting for the worst, waiting for the moment I'll be too broken to fight you for this house." She didn't deny it. Instead, she leaned forward, her expression softening just enough to feign concern. "William, I'm only trying to help. Mom and Dad think it's best if I take the house. It's what Grandma would have wanted." I laughed bitterly. "No, Rachel. It's what you want." Rachel sighed, standing. "Think about it. You can't live in the past forever." She left without another word, leaving the faint scent of expensive perfume in her wake. As the door clicked shut, I looked toward the stairs, toward the frail little girl who was my entire world. Rachel was wrong. The past wasn't the problem. It was the future that terrified me. The morning light barely seeped through the heavy curtains as I sat beside Dolly's bed, watching her sleep. Her breathing was slow, uneven, her small fingers curled around the edge of the blanket. The last round of treatment had taken more from her than before. Her once bright eyes were now shadowed with exhaustion. Her voice barely more than a whisper these days. I brushed a damp strand of hair from her forehead. "Daddy?" Her voice was hoarse, fragile. "I'm here, sweetheart." I forced a smile, gripping her tiny hand. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something more, but instead, she just closed her eyes again, too weak to fight the weight of sleep. A sharp knock on the door sent a spike of irritation through me. I knew who it was before I even stood up. "Rachel." I found her in the living room pacing. She turned the moment she saw me, her arms crossed over her designer coat. "I need an answer," she said, skipping any pretense of concern. "Are you signing over the house or not?" I exhaled sharply. "Rachel, I can't deal with this right now." "You've been saying that for weeks," she snapped. "Mom and Dad agree it's the right thing to do. You don't need this house, William." "I do. I just got a promotion, but it's in a different district. I need a permanent place, and you?" She trailed off, glancing toward the staircase. I clenched my fists. "Go ahead, say it." Rachel hesitated for a moment before finally spitting it out. "Dolly isn't going to get better. What's the point of holding on to this place?" Something inside me cracked. My jaw tightened as I struggled to keep my voice level. Get out. William. Get out. I roared, my voice echoing off the walls. Rachel took a step back, startled. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in her eyes. But then, just as quickly, she recovered. Fine, but don't expect Mom and Dad to take your side when you're left with nothing. She turned on her heel and left, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, fists shaking, heart pounding against my ribs. Then from upstairs, a weak, trembling voice called out, "Daddy?" I turned, all anger vanishing in an instant. Dolly was awake, and she had heard everything. Dolly's laughter rang through the small kitchen, a sound so rare these days that it almost startled me. She sat at the table, carefully spooning bits of oatmeal into her mouth, her cheeks brighter than they had been in weeks. "I feel good today, Daddy," she said, flashing me a weak but genuine smile. "Can we go outside?" I hesitated. The last time she had tried, she barely made it down the porch steps before collapsing into my arms, her body too frail to support itself. But today, something was different. There was a light in her eyes, a small flicker of energy that made my heart ache with cautious hope. "All right," I said, forcing a smile, "just for a little while." She beamed as I helped her into her coat, her small fingers fumbling with the buttons. We stepped out into the crisp autumn air, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw my little girl enjoying the world beyond her sickbed. She walked slowly through the yard, pausing to admire the fallen leaves, her breath misting in the cool air. I sat on the porch steps, watching her. My chest ached with something between joy and dread. Was this a sign that things were improving, or was it? "William?" Rachel's voice shattered the fragile moment. I turned to see her standing by the gate, an envelope clutched in her perfectly manicured hand. Her expression was triumphant. "I have the papers," she announced, waving them. "All you need to do is sign." Dolly turned, frowning. "What papers?" I swallowed hard, my jaw tightening. "Nothing you need to worry about, sweetheart." Rachel scoffed. "Oh, come on. She deserves to know." She turned to Dolly with a syrupy sweet smile. "Your daddy is giving me this house. Isn't that great?" Dolly's face fell, the brightness in her eyes dimming. "But this is our home." I shot Rachel a glare so sharp it could have cut through stone. "Not now, Rachel." But she only smirked, holding the papers out to me. Better now than later. My hands curled into fists. I wanted to fight, to tell her no, to scream that this house was the last stable thing Dolly had. But then I looked at my daughter, so fragile, so trusting. Stress wasn't good for her. I exhaled slowly, took the papers, and signed. Rachel snatched them back with a victorious grin. Smart choice. She turned on her heel, already dialing a number on her phone. "Yes, it's done," I heard her say as she walked away. Dolly tugged weakly on my sleeve. "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" I forced a smile, though my heart was breaking. "Of course, sweetheart, we always are." I was so relieved and hopeful that Dolly was starting to recover, but unfortunately miracles don't happen. After 2 days, she got much worse, and the ambulance took us to the hospital. In the hospital room was too quiet. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor had once been a source of reassurance, proof that Dolly was still fighting. Now it was unbearable. I sat by her bed, my fingers curled around her frail hand, feeling the delicate warmth that was slipping away too fast. "Daddy." Her voice was barely above a whisper. Her eyelids fluttered, struggling to stay open. "I'm here, sweetheart," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I'm right here." She gave me a tired smile. "I had a dream. Mommy was there." My breath caught in my throat. I brushed damp hair away from her forehead. "Yeah." She said she's waiting for me. Dolly blinked slowly, as if seeing something I couldn't. She said I won't be scared. I swallowed the lump in my throat, my grip tightening around her tiny fingers. "You don't have to go yet, baby. You stay with me, okay?" She let out a soft breath, the rise and fall of her chest so faint I almost missed it. "I love you, Daddy." Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I love you more." Dolly's fingers twitched in my grasp, then stilled. The beeping of the monitor stretched into one long, piercing note. No, I choked, shaking her gently. Dolly? The door burst open, nurses rushing in. One of them reached for me, but I shoved her off. Do something. She's just tired. I didn't finish. The doctor's expression told me everything. A sound tore from my chest, something between a sob and a scream. And my tears came in streams, breaking through the platinum that had held them back for months. I roared my heart out, grief-stricken. My little girl, my world, was gone. Somewhere in the chaos, my phone buzzed. Mechanically, I looked at the screen. A message from Rachel. Don't forget about the party tomorrow. Hope you're coming. I stared at the words, my hands shaking. The grief in my chest twisted into something darker, something cold. Rachel had no idea what she had just done. The house that once belonged to my grandmother stood adorned with gold and white balloons, laughter spilling out onto the street. Rachel's promotion party was in full swing. The sight of it twisted something deep in my gut. Less than 8 hours had passed since I buried my daughter, and here she was, celebrating. And yet neither she nor her parents even attended the funeral, deeming it a minor event. I stepped through the open gate, unnoticed among the revelers. My fist clenched as I spotted Rachel at the top of a ladder, hanging decorative lights along the porch railing. She wore an expensive dress, her face glowing with satisfaction. William, you came, she called down, smiling. I knew you'd get over it. Life moves on, doesn't it? I stared at her. My silence stretched long enough that others began to turn, sensing something off. Rachel's smile faltered. You knew Dolly was dying, I said finally, my voice steady, cold. And yet you threw this party anyway. Rachel scoffed, rolling her eyes. Oh, come on. It's not like canceling would have brought her back. A sharp silence fell over the crowd. I took a step closer. You're right, but you should have had the decency to care. Rachel opened her mouth, but a sharp crack interrupted her. One of the ladder's joints groaned under her weight. She wobbled, gripping the railing too late. A gasp rippled through the guests as she tumbled, hitting the pavement with a sickening thud. Screams erupted. Someone called for an ambulance. I stepped forward, looking down at my half-sister, her body twisted at an unnatural angle. Her eyes locked onto mine, pain and terror flooding them. Will, help me, she croaked. I crouched beside her, my expression unreadable. Life moves on, doesn't it? Rachel's face crumpled. She knew. The doctors later confirmed it. Spinal fracture, permanent paralysis. 2 years passed. I never visited Rachel, never answered her calls. Instead, I rebuilt my life. A new home, a woman who truly cared for me, a child on the way. One evening, as I sat in the backyard, watching the sunset, my wife squeezed my hand. Do you ever think about her? Rachel? Sometimes. But she was nothing more than a ghost now. Karma has caught up with her. I smiled, pressing a kiss to my wife's forehead. No, all I think about all the time is my little Dolly, and of course us in our future. Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.